The linen napkin cost the restaurant exactly 35 cents to launder. The mathematical correction scrawled on the back of it, however, was worth $4 billion. In a world governed by perception, Harrison Cole believed that a uniform defined a person's worth. He thought the woman pouring his vintage Pinot Noir was invisible, a piece of furniture with a pulse. He was wrong. When the billionaire tried to crush a rival with a flawed algorithm, he didn't expect the uneducated waitress to shatter his ego with a single sentence. This is the story of how the invisible woman became the most dangerous person in the room. The air inside Le Cercle Rouge smelled of truffle oil, old leather, and desperation. It was a specific kind of desperation, the kind that wore Italian wool suits and checked Patek Philippe watches every 30 seconds. Isabel Mercer adjusted the collar of her black waistcoat. It was a size too big, bunching uncomfortably at the small of her back, but she didn't complain. Complaints got you fired, and firing meant the terrifying math of her bank account would finally collapse into the red. She picked up a tray of crystal flutes, her face a practiced mask of indifference. Table 4 needs a refresh on the sparkling. The maitre d', a perpetually sweating man named Jean-Luc, hissed as he breezed past her. And for the love of God, Isabel, do not make eye contact with Mr. Cole. He's in a mood. Isabel didn't nod. She just moved. She glided across the plush carpet of the Manhattan establishment, a ghost in the machine of high finance. Table 4 was the prime real estate of the restaurant, a corner booth bathed in the golden glow of an Art Deco chandelier. Occupying the center seat was Harrison Cole. At 42, Cole was the face of Blackwood Capital, a man whose frown could dip the Nasdaq. He had the jawline of a news anchor and the eyes of a shark that had just smelled blood in the water. Sitting opposite him was a younger man, pale and trembling. Isabel recognized him from the business section of the discarded newspapers she read on the subway. Daniel Cross, a tech prodigy, a kid who had built a logistics AI called Vector and was now about to lose it. "It's a generous offer, Daniel," Harrison said, his voice smooth, like gravel grinding in honey. He didn't look at the menu. He never looked at the menu. "You're bleeding cash. The Series B funding dried up. I'm offering you a life raft." "It's a hostile takeover masked as a merger," Daniel stammered, adjusting his glasses. "The valuation is—" "It's wrong, Harrison. Your risk assessment model is penalizing our Q3 growth based on projected volatility that doesn't exist." Isabel approached the table. She knew the protocol. Approach from the left, pour with the right, vanish. "Volatility doesn't exist." Harrison laughed, a dry, humorless sound. He signaled for his glass to be filled without turning his head. "Daniel, look around you. The market is a living animal. My analysts run the Black-Scholes model with a modified decay factor. We don't guess. We know." Isabel began to pour the mineral water into Daniel's glass. Her hand was steady, but her mind snagged on the words. "Modified decay factor." "But the variable," Daniel pressed, desperate. "You're using a static volatility index for a dynamic logistics chain. It undervalues Vector by 40%. Harrison slammed his hand down on the table. The silverware rattled. Isabel froze, the bottle hovering an inch from the glass. "You are a coder, Daniel. You type syntax. I deal in reality," Harrison sneered, leaning forward. "I have 3 PhDs from MIT, sitting in a basement in Greenwich, telling me your company is worth 600 million. Not the billion you think it is. You're emotional. You're irrational." Harrison gestured vaguely to his right, his hand nearly striking Isabel's arm. "It's like trying to explain calculus to her." He jabbed a finger toward Isabel. The restaurant seemed to go silent. "Excuse me?" Daniel whispered, looking from Harrison to Isabel. Harrison didn't even look at her face. He looked at her uniform. Her. The help. If I tried to explain the concept of gamma hedging to this waitress, her eyes would glaze over. She's worried about tips and sore feet. She serves the food. She doesn't think about where the money to buy it comes from. That is the natural order. Some people are built for labor, Daniel, and some are built for leverage. Isabel felt the heat rise up her neck. It wasn't shame. It was a cold, hard rage she hadn't felt in 3 years. She finished pouring the water. She should walk away. She needed this job. Her father's medical bills were due on the 1st. The rent for the studio apartment in Queens was already late. Walk away, Izzy, she told herself. Just sign the term sheet, Daniel, Harrison said, dismissing Isabel with a wave of his hand as if shooing a fly. Before I decide, your company is worth 0. Isabel placed the water bottle on the coaster. The sound of glass on marble was a sharp clack. She didn't retreat. She stood there. Actually, Isabel said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried a strange resonance in the hushed dining room. Harrison stopped. He slowly turned his head, his eyes narrowing as they finally landed on her face. He looked at her as if a lamp had just started speaking Portuguese. I'm sorry, Harrison asked, his tone dripping with incredulity. Did you say something? I asked for sparkling, not a conversation. You said he's using a static volatility index, Isabel said, her hands clasped behind her back. She looked Harrison Cole directly in the eyes. But if you're applying a modified decay factor to a logistics chain, you aren't using black skulls. You're likely using a variance of the Heston model. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Daniel Cross looked up, his mouth slightly open. Harrison blinked. Once. Twice. The arrogant smirk faltered for a microsecond before returning, sharper than before. I beg your pardon. The Heston model, Isabel repeated, her voice gaining strength. It assumes volatility is arbitrary. But Mr. Cross's company is logistics. Logistics isn't arbitrary. It's seasonal and cyclical. If your analysts are treating his inventory turnover as stochastic volatility, they aren't just undervaluing his company. She paused, looking down at the term sheet spread across the table. They're committing a mathematical error that biases the valuation downward by a factor of roughly the square root of time. Isabel tilted her head. I'd say you're shorting him about $300 million, give or take. For 10 seconds, the only sound in the obsidian room of Le Cercle Rouge was the clinking of silverware from the far side of the restaurant. At table 4, the atmosphere was heavy enough to crush a submarine. Harrison Cole's face went through a complex transformation. It started with shock, transitioned into confusion, and settled into a cold, predatory amusement. He sat back in his leather chair, crossing his arms over his chest. Jean-Luc, Harrison barked, not breaking eye contact with Isabel. The manager materialized instantly, looking as though he might have a stroke. Mr. Cole, sir, I am so sorry. I will remove her immediately. No, Harrison said, holding up a hand. Wait. He looked Isabel up and down, this time not as furniture, but as a curiosity, like a dog that had walked on its hind legs. You know the Heston model, Harrison said, his voice low. That's a fascinating party trick. Where did you hear that? Did you overhear a banker talking on your last shift? Memorize a few buzzwords to impress a date? I didn't memorize it, Isabel said calmly. I derived it. Harrison laughed. It was a loud, barking sound that drew the attention of the entire room. You derived it. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a prodigy clearing tables. Tell me, if you're a quant genius, why are you wearing an apron that smells like stale bread? Because life is stochastic, Mr. Cole, Isabel replied, her face impassive. "Random variables affect us all. Even you." Harrison's smile vanished. He didn't like being challenged. He especially didn't like being challenged by someone making minimum wage plus tips. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a gold Mont Blanc pen. He grabbed the linen napkin from his lap and tossed it onto the table. "Fine," Harrison said. He pointed to the napkin. "Prove it." "Sir," Jean-Luc squeaked. "Quiet," Harrison snapped. He looked at Isabel. "You say my valuation is wrong. You say my analysts, MIT graduates, made a mistake. Show me where. Right now. If you can prove that my volatility index is flawed mathematically, I'll double the offer to Mr. Cross." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "But if you can't, if you're just wasting my time, I will ensure you never work in this city again. Not at a restaurant, not at a gas station. I will make you radioactive." Isabel looked at Daniel. The young founder was looking at her with a mixture of hope and terror. "You don't have to do this," Daniel whispered. Isabel looked back at Harrison. She saw the bully in him, the man who thought money was a substitute for intellect. "I'll need a pen," she said. Harrison slid the gold pen across the tablecloth. Isabel picked it up. It was heavy, perfectly balanced. She flattened the napkin against the table. She closed her eyes for a split second, visualizing the data sets she had seen in the newspaper, the variables Harrison had mentioned, and the fundamental flaw in applying financial market theory to physical logistics. She began to write. The ink bled slightly into the linen, but her hand was sure. She didn't write sentences. She wrote symbols, Greek letters, integrals. Wafrak dorsed nuas to hlo, course. Kappa a theta, dan Johansa, ja plussas as en påse grassa en måsen skatosas nua hat, dedabatalabudablabaljote. She wrote quickly, sketching out the correlation coefficient between the asset price and the volatility. Your model assumes tight order to bucks RHO is constant, Isabel said as she wrote, her voice slipping into the rhythm of a lecture she hadn't given in years. But in logistics, pro-doublers is dependent on external supply chain shocks. You can't integrate over the time horizon without adjusting for the seasonality of shipping routes. She slashed a line through the bottom of the equation and wrote a correction term. While sigma, Jasmint said T. Sigma, Twasutor plus lambda, and jump usast, T. Distorse. You missed the jump diffusion, she said, capping the pen. She spun the napkin around so it faced Harrison. You're treating a supply chain like a stock. Stocks move instantly. Ships don't. Your formula anticipates risk that can't physically happen that fast. You're discounting the value based on ghost fear. She slid the pen back to him. You owe him $300 million. Harrison stared at the napkin. He stared at it for a long time. He picked it up, holding it close to his face. He knew math. He wasn't just a suit. He was a shark who knew how to count teeth. He traced the line of her equation. He looked for the error. He looked for the bluff. His brow furrowed. He pulled out his phone, snapped a picture of the napkin, and tapped furiously. "Who are you texting?" Daniel asked, emboldened by Isabel's confidence. "My head of quantitative analysis," Harrison muttered. 3 minutes passed. The restaurant floor was frozen. Jean-Luc was hyperventilating near the kitchen door. Isabel stood with her hands clasped, staring at a point on the wall. Harrison's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. He read the message. Then he read it again. His face drained of color. The arrogance didn't just fade. It evaporated. He looked up at Isabel. The look in his eyes wasn't respect. It was fear. The kind of fear a man feels when he realizes the trap door he was standing on has just been unlatched. "Who are you?" Harrison whispered. "I'm the waitress for table 4, Isabel said. Would you like to see the dessert menu, or will you be signing the corrected term sheet?" Harrison swallowed hard. He looked at Daniel, who was grinning like a lunatic. Harrison stammered. He looked at the phone again. The text from his analyst read, "The math is sound. Actually, it's brilliant. We missed the jump diffusion. Who sent you this?" Harrison cleared his throat. He took out his checkbook, figuratively speaking, and looked at Daniel. "It appears there was an oversight in our preliminary data." "So the valuation?" Daniel pressed. "We will adjust it," Harrison said through gritted teeth. "To the billion." Daniel pumped his fist silently under the table. Harrison stood up. He didn't look at Daniel. He looked at Isabel. He moved into her personal space, his expensive cologne overpowering the smell of food. "You think you're clever," Harrison hissed, low enough that only she could hear. "You think you won. But nobody humiliates Harrison Cole in public. You have no idea what you've just done." "I did my job," Isabel said calmly, "and I fixed yours." Harrison grabbed his coat. "Jean-Luc," the manager ran over. "Fire her," Harrison said coldly. "Now, or I buy this building and turn it into a parking lot." Jean-Luc looked at Isabel with teary, apologetic eyes. "Isabel." It's okay, Jean-Luc," Isabel said. She untied her apron and folded it neatly over the back of the chair. She looked Harrison Cole in the eye one last time. "I quit." She turned and walked toward the kitchen doors, her head held high. But as the door swung shut behind her, the adrenaline crashed. Her hands began to shake. She had won the argument, but she had lost her livelihood. And she knew, with a sinking feeling in her gut, that Harrison Cole was not a man who let things go. She hadn't just bruised his ego. She had made an enemy of a billionaire. She grabbed her coat from the locker, her heart pounding. She had to get out of there. She had to disappear again. But as she pushed open the back exit into the rainy alleyway, a black SUV was already idling at the curb. The window rolled down. It wasn't Harrison. It was a woman Isabel hadn't seen in 5 years. A woman wearing a headset and a sharp blazer, looking at a tablet. She looked up, locking eyes with Isabel. "Hello, Dr. Sterling," the woman said, using the name Isabel had buried a long time ago. "We saw the live stream from the restaurant security feed. We need to talk." The rain in the alleyway was cold, mixing with the steam venting from the restaurant's industrial dishwasher to create a thick, grey fog. Isabel stood by the open door of the black Cadillac Escalade, her hand gripping the handle of her worn tote bag until her knuckles turned white. "Dr. Sterling," the woman in the back seat repeated. She had a sharp bob cut, severe glasses, and the kind of tailored blazer that cost more than Isabel's father made in a year. Isabel took a step back, the rain plastering her hair to her forehead. "You have the wrong person. My name is Isabel Mercer." "We both know that isn't true," the woman said, opening the door wider. "Get in, Isabel. Harrison Cole just called the New York Post, Bloomberg, and the chief of police. He's telling them a mental patient attacked him at Le Cercle Rouge. If you stay on the street, you'll be in a holding cell at Rikers Island within 20 minutes. I'm offering you a ride." Isabel hesitated. The sirens were already wailing in the distance, bouncing off the canyon walls of Manhattan. She looked at the woman's face and recognized her. It was Claire Hemlock. 5 years ago, Claire had been a junior analyst at the SEC. Now, judging by the car and the driver, she was private sector. High up, Isabel got in. The door slammed shut, sealing out the noise of the city. The interior smelled of eucalyptus and leather. "Drive," Claire commanded. As the car pulled away, merging seamlessly into the chaotic traffic of Fifth Avenue, Claire opened a laptop. On the screen was a paused frame of the security footage from the restaurant. It showed Isabel pointing at the napkin. You corrected the Heston model using a jump diffusion parameter, Claire said, not looking up from the screen. Brilliant. Careless, but brilliant. You exposed a flaw in Blackwood Capital's primary valuation algorithm in front of a witness. You know what Cole is going to do, don't you? He's going to sue me, Isabel said, staring out the tinted window as the city blurred by. Suing is for people who want money, Claire corrected. Harrison Cole has money. He wants blood. He's going to erase you. Again. Claire tapped a key, and a new window popped up. It was an old news article from the Wall Street Journal, dated 5 years prior. The headline read, "The Sterling Crash, MIT Prodigy, blamed for $2 billion flash crash." Below the headline was a photo of Isabel. She looked younger, happier, standing in front of a chalkboard covered in equations. She was wearing a graduation gown. Dr. Isabel Sterling, Claire read aloud. Double PhD in applied mathematics and financial engineering from MIT. The youngest tenure-track professor in the history of Columbia University. The creator of the Sterling Gamma Protocol. Isabel closed her eyes. I didn't cause that crash, Claire. You know that. The protocol was sound. Someone removed the fail-safes. I know, Claire said softly. I was at the SEC then. I saw the logs, but the logs disappeared, and you took the fall. You were stripped of your tenure, your license, and your reputation. You became the pariah of Wall Street, and now you've just poked the bear. He was robbing that kid, Isabel said, her voice hard. He was using a volatility decay model to justify a hostile takeover. I couldn't just watch. That kid is Daniel Cross, Claire said, and the hostile takeover is actually a cover for something much bigger. Cole isn't just buying Vector Logistics for their trucks, Isabel. He's buying them for their data. Claire turned the laptop toward Isabel. It displayed a complex map of global shipping routes overlaid with financial market fluctuations. Harrison Cole is building something called Project Janus, Claire explained. He's trying to create a predictive engine that doesn't just forecast the market, but controls it. If he acquires Vector, he controls the physical supply chain. He can create shortages on purpose, short the stock, and then release the inventory to make a profit on the recovery. It's market manipulation on a global scale. Isabel looked at the map. The math in her head started clicking into place. He needs the logistics data to calibrate the timing. That's why he needed the volatility index to be low, to hide the risk from the regulators. Exactly, Claire said. And you just proved that his math is broken. You didn't just cost him a few million on the deal, Isabel. You threatened the foundation of $1 trillion scheme. The car slowed down. They weren't at a police station. They were parked in front of a rundown tenement building in Queens, Isabel's apartment. How do you know where I live? Isabel asked, feeling a chill. I've been keeping tabs on you, Claire admitted. I always knew you were innocent, and I knew one day you'd get tired of hiding. Isabel reached for the door handle. I'm not tired of hiding, Claire. I'm tired of surviving. I just got fired. I have rent to pay. You won't be paying rent here, Claire said grimly. Isabel looked out the window. On the sidewalk, her meager belongings were already piled up in cardboard boxes. Her landlord was standing there with a sheriff's deputy. Eviction, Isabel gasped. I'm only 2 weeks late. Cole bought the building, Claire said. 10 minutes ago. He bought the mortgage from the bank and ordered an immediate eviction for breach of contract. He's moving fast. Isabel watched as the rain soaked her boxes, her books, her father's old records, everything she had left. He wants you on the street, Claire said. He wants you desperate. He wants you to come crawling to him so he can crush you properly. Isabel didn't cry. The tears had dried up years ago when she lost her career. Instead, a cold, calculated anger settled in her chest. It was the same feeling she had when she solved a partial differential equation, the clarity of absolute focus. She turned back to Claire. "Who are you working for now, Claire?" "I started my own firm," Claire said. "Hemlock Analytics. We're small, niche. We hunt financial predators." "You want to hire me?" "I can't hire you," Claire said. "You're radioactive. If I put you on payroll, coal destroys me too." "But—" Claire reached into her purse and pulled out a keycard and a burner phone. "I have a safe house, a loft in Brooklyn. It has a secure server, a Bloomberg terminal, and 3 monitors. It's off the grid." Isabel took the items. "What do you want in return?" "I want the truth about the Sterling crash," Claire said. "And I want to stop Harrison Cole. Daniel Cross called me 5 minutes ago. He's looking for you. He didn't sign the deal, Isabel. He walked out." Isabel's eyebrows shot up. "He walked away from $1 billion?" He realized that if Harrison Cole lied about the math, he lied about everything. "Daniel is at the loft waiting for us. He has the raw code for Vector. He needs a mathematician to help him weaponize it against Cole." Isabel looked at the rain-soaked boxes on the sidewalk, then at the secure, dry interior of the car. "Let's go," Isabel said. "I have some equations to solve." The loft in Brooklyn was a repurposed textile factory, all exposed brick and humming servers. It smelled of ozone and stale coffee. When Isabel walked in, Daniel Cross was pacing the floor, his tie undone, his hair a mess. He looked like a man who had just jumped off a cliff and was trying to build a parachute on the way down. "You!" Daniel shouted when he saw her. He ran over, stopping just short of grabbing her shoulders. "You're real. I thought maybe I hallucinated you." "I'm real," Isabel said, taking off her wet coat. She walked straight to the bank of monitors. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Show me the source code." Daniel blinked. Hello? Thank you. You saved my company." "I didn't save your company yet," Isabel said, sitting in the ergonomic chair. It felt foreign after years of standing on hard restaurant floors. "I just delayed its execution. Cole will come for you. He'll short your stock, spread rumors about your solvency, and have the SEC audit your grandmother. If we want to survive, we need to prove his model is fraudulent before the market opens on Monday." She spun around to face him. "Show me the code, Daniel." Daniel hooked up his laptop. Lines of Python and C++ cascaded down the large screens. Isabel put on a pair of blue light glasses Claire handed her. She cracked her knuckles. For the first time in 5 years, she felt alive. She wasn't Isabel the waitress. She was Dr. Sterling. "Okay," she muttered, her eyes scanning the syntax. "This is your logistics algorithm. It optimizes shipping routes based on fuel costs and weather patterns. Standard." "It's not just standard," Daniel defended. "It uses a genetic algorithm to evolve the routes in real time." "Cute," Isabel said. "But look here." She pointed to a block of code buried deep in the kernel. "What is this subroutine? External override SAS protocol 7? Daniel frowned. "I didn't write that. That must be from the API library we licensed from—" "Oh no." "From who?" "From a subsidiary of Blackwood Capital," Daniel whispered. "We used their data feed for port congestion." Isabel typed furiously. "It's a back door. Cole didn't need to buy your company to control it. He's already inside. This protocol allows him to artificially inflate your latency numbers. He can make your trucks look late, even when they're on time." "Why?" Daniel asked. "To lower your stock price," Isabel said. "He was tanking your value from the inside so he could buy you cheap. That's why the volatility index was wrong on the napkin. He wasn't calculating risk, he was manufacturing it." Claire leaned against the desk. This is illegal. Highly illegal. But we can't prove it. That code looks like a standard bug to an untrained eye. Then we need to force him to admit it, Isabel said. She turned to the whiteboard behind her. She grabbed a marker and began to write. What math call L-tos theta. Ward sum I woha. Oslog an xi dedo an theta. Or lambda or theta. 2 to los star. What is that? Daniel asked. That, Isabel said, capping the marker, is the encryption key for the Sterling Gamma protocol. The work I did at MIT. The work Cole stole. She turned to them. The flash crash 5 years ago happened because someone tried to run my protocol without the dampening factor. They turned it on, and it ate the market. I always suspected it was Cole, but I couldn't prove he had the code. But if he's building Project Janus to control the market, he has to be using my core architecture. Nothing else is fast enough. So what's the plan? Claire asked. The gala, Isabel said. Tomorrow night, the Metropolitan Gala of Industry. Harrison Cole is the keynote speaker. He's unveiling Project Janus to the world's biggest investors. He's going to run a live demo. Isabel's eyes gleamed with a dangerous intelligence. He thinks he's going to show them the future, she said. We're going to show them the past. We're going to inject a variable into his live demo that only my original code would recognize. If Janus reacts to it, it proves he's running stolen tech. And if it reacts, Daniel asked. Then the algorithm collapses, Isabel said. Live on stage, in front of the Federal Reserve Chairman, the SEC, and every camera in New York. He'll kill us, Daniel said, swallowing hard. He's already tried, Isabel said. She looked at the screen, at the complex math that had defined her life. I'm done serving tables, Daniel. It's time to serve justice. The Metropolitan Museum of Art was transformed. The Temple of Dendur was bathed in blue laser light, and the air buzzed with the chatter of billionaires. Harrison Cole stood at the center of the room, holding a glass of champagne. He looked like a king. He wore a tuxedo that cost more than a Honda Civic, and he was surrounded by sycophants laughing too hard at his jokes. The Asian markets are ripe, Harrison was saying to a senator. With Project Janus, we eliminate uncertainty. We don't predict the future, Senator. We curate it. Across the room, near the shadows of the Egyptian columns, Isabel Mercer entered. She wasn't wearing a waitress uniform. She was wearing a floor-length gown of midnight blue silk, borrowed from Claire's closet. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant chignon. She wore diamond earrings, fakes, but high-quality ones. She looked regal. She looked dangerous. Daniel Cross walked beside her, looking terrified in a rental tux. He was clutching a tablet disguised as a program. Security is tight, Daniel whispered. They have biometric scanners at the server room. We don't need the server room, Isabel said, her eyes locked on Harrison. We just need to be on the Wi-Fi. The guest Wi-Fi is firewalled, Daniel hissed. Not for us, Isabel said. Claire is in the van outside. She's spoofing the credentials of the catering company. We have 3 minutes once the keynote starts. Harrison Cole stepped onto the stage. The lights dimmed. A massive screen descended behind him. Ladies and gentlemen, Harrison boomed, his charisma filling the massive hall. For centuries, man has been a slave to the whims of the market. Famine, war, supply chain disruptions. We reacted. Tonight, I propose we stop reacting. I give you Janus. The screen flared to life. A beautiful, rotating globe appeared, pulsating with data streams. This is a live feed of the global economy, Harrison said. Processed in nanoseconds. Janus is currently managing $4 trillion of assets in real time. The crowd gasped. Now, Harrison said. Watch what happens when I simulate a crude oil shortage in the North Sea. He tapped a console. The globe shifted. Red lines appeared, but then instantly turned green as the AI rerouted ships and hedged funds. Profit, Harrison smiled. Stability. Now, Daniel, Isabel whispered. Daniel tapped the tablet. In the van outside, Claire hit enter. A single packet of data was injected into the Janus local network. It wasn't a virus. It was a math problem. Specifically, it was the Stirling paradox, a logical loop that Isabel had designed as a signature in her original code. It was a question: if the set of all sets contains itself, what is the value of 0? It was a question that would be ignored by any standard AI. But if the AI was built on Isabel's stolen neural architecture, it would be compelled to solve it. On stage, the globe flickered. Harrison frowned. He tapped the console again. As you can see, the globe stopped rotating. The green lines turned purple. "One moment," Harrison said, his smile tightening. Suddenly, the screen behind him changed. The map of the world vanished. Instead, a stream of raw code appeared. It was scrolling so fast it was a blur. Then, the text stopped. A single equation appeared on the massive 40-foot screen. Bandwachten empty. Winode. X2. Dajar at Swarskart was P to quad. Text. Author. I. Stirling. The room went silent. Harrison Cole froze. He looked at the screen, then he looked out into the audience. He saw her. Standing in the center aisle, illuminated by the glow of the screen, was Isabel. "That's," a voice in the front row whispered. "That's the Stirling signature." Harrison gripped the podium. "Technical difficulties," he shouted, his voice cracking. "Cut the feed, cut it!" But the feed didn't cut. The equation dissolved, and new text appeared. It wasn't math this time. It was a ledger account. Blackwood offshore. Cayman transfer. 2,000. Source, unregistered SEC trade. 2019. The Stirling crash. The crowd erupted. Phones were raised. The senator in the front row stood up, looking horrified. "You stole it!" Isabel's voice rang out. She didn't have a microphone, but she projected her voice with the authority of a professor addressing a lecture hall. She walked toward the stage. Security guards moved to intercept her, but the crowd blocked them, too busy filming the meltdown. "You stole the Stirling protocol," Isabel said, climbing the stairs to the stage. She stood 5 feet from Harrison Cole. "You removed the safety dampers to maximize profit, caused the flash crash, and framed me to cover your tracks. And tonight, you tried to sell a broken version of my life's work to the world." Harrison's face was purple. Veins bulged in his neck. "You waitress! You nobody! Security! Arrest this woman! She's hacking my system!" "I didn't hack it," Isabel said calmly. "I just asked it a question only its mother could answer, and it answered me." She turned to the audience. "My name is Dr. Isabel Stirling, and Blackwood Capital is insolvent. The algorithm you see behind me isn't predicting the market. It's rigging it. And as of this moment," she pointed to the screen, the numbers were plummeting. "It's dividing by 0. The screen flashed red. Critical failure. The lights in the hall flickered and died, plunging the gala into chaos. "You ruined me!" Harrison screamed in the dark, lunging at her. Isabel stepped aside effortlessly, a move she had learned dodging drunk patrons in the bar. Harrison crashed into the podium, knocking it over with a deafening screech of feedback. Emergency lights bathed the room in an eerie orange glow. "I didn't ruin you, Harrison," Isabel whispered into his ear as he lay panting on the floor. "I just corrected your math." But the victory was short-lived. As the confusion swirled, heavy boots stomped onto the stage. Not private security. NYPD. "Harrison Cole!" a voice boomed. Harrison looked up, hope in his eyes. "Yes, arrest her. She's a cyber-terrorist." The officer ignored Isabel. He walked straight to Harrison and pulled out handcuffs. Harrison Cole, you are under arrest for securities fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit industrial espionage. Harrison's jaw dropped. What? On whose authority? The crowd parted. A man in a trench coat walked forward. He looked tired, worn, but satisfied. It was the SEC commissioner, and walking right next to him was Claire Hemlock. On mine, the commissioner said. We've been watching the data feed from your Janus server for the last hour, thanks to a tip from Ms. Hemlock. You just broadcast your own confession to the Federal Reserve. Harrison was hauled to his feet. As they dragged him away, he locked eyes with Isabel. "This isn't over," he screamed, struggling against the cuffs. "You think you've won? You have no idea who I work for. I'm just the middleman. They will come for you. They will—" The heavy doors slammed shut, cutting off his scream. Isabel stood alone on the stage. Daniel ran up to her, grinning wildly. "We did it! Isabel, we did it!" But Isabel wasn't smiling. She was looking at the screen, which was now black. "He said he was just the middleman," she murmured. "He's crazy," Daniel said. "He's desperate." "No," Isabel said. She felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the cold. Harrison Cole is a narcissist. He would never admit to being a middleman unless he was terrified of someone bigger than him. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. She pulled it out. Unknown number. She answered. "Dr. Sterling," a distorted voice said. It wasn't Harrison. It was deeper, synthetic. "Congratulations on removing Mr. Cole. He was becoming inefficient." "Who is this?" Isabel demanded. "We have been waiting for the Sterling protocol to come back online," the voice said. "Thank you for unlocking it. We have the data now." Isabel's blood ran cold. "I crashed the system. You crashed Cole's interface," the voice said. "But the core code? The source? You just broadcast it to the cloud to prove your point. We have it. And unlike Mr. Cole, we know how to use it properly." The line went dead. Isabel looked up at Daniel, who was celebrating with Claire. "Daniel," she said, her voice trembling, "shut it down. Shut down the laptop." "What? Why?" "We didn't kill the monster," Isabel whispered, looking into the darkness of the museum hall. "We just set it free." The silence in the back of the surveillance van was heavier than the humid New York night outside. The Metropolitan Gala was chaos in the rearview mirror, flashing red and blue lights reflecting off the wet pavement. But inside the cramped vehicle, the war had moved from physical to digital. "Trace it, Claire," Isabel commanded, her voice devoid of fear. The trembling she had felt earlier was gone, replaced by the icy calculation of a mathematician facing an unsolvable problem. Whoever that was, they just downloaded a weaponized version of my life's work. Claire Hemlock was typing at a speed that blurred her fingers. Her screens were a waterfall of hex code and tracer routes. "I'm trying, Isabel." They used a VoIP relay, bouncing through Singapore, Kiev, Toronto. "Wait. What?" Daniel asked, leaning over her shoulder. He was still clutching his loosened tie, sweat dripping down his nose. "They got lazy," Claire whispered, her eyes widening. "Or arrogant. The final hop didn't go to a cloud server. It went to a physical line, a dark fiber connection." "Dark fiber?" Isabel asked. "Private unlit optical fiber," Daniel explained, his logistics background kicking in. "Ultra-low latency. High-frequency traders use it to shave nanoseconds off trades. If they are using a dedicated line, they aren't on the cloud. They're in a building, a fortress." "Where?" Isabel pressed. Claire hit a final key. A map of the tri-state area popped up. A single red dot pulsed in the industrial wastelands of New Jersey, just across the Hudson River. "Weehawken," Claire said. "An old data center disguised as a shipping warehouse. It's owned by a shell company called Aurelius Holdings." Isabel stared at the dot. Harrison Cole was the public face. He took the risks, gave the speeches, and bullied the companies. But Aurelius, they are the money behind the money. They're the ones who wanted the market control. If they have the Sterling Protocol, Daniel said, his voice rising in panic, and they have that dark fiber connection, they don't need to wait for the market to open on Monday. They can trade on the overnight futures. They can crash the Asian markets while we sleep, buy up the debt for pennies, and own the sovereign debt of entire nations by breakfast. Isabel looked at the digital clock on the dashboard. 11:42 p.m. The Asian markets open in 18 minutes, Isabel said. We can't hack them remotely, not with that level of encryption. We have to go there. Go there. Claire looked at her like she was insane. Isabel, that place will have armed guards. It's not a restaurant. It's a machine, Isabel said, grabbing her laptop. And every machine has a physical kill switch. Drive. The warehouse in Weehawken looked like a tomb. It was a massive, windowless monolith of concrete sitting on the edge of the dark water. There were no signs, only a high chain-link fence topped with razor wire and cameras that moved with insect-like precision. Claire parked the van a block away, behind a stack of rusted shipping containers. Okay, Claire said, pulling up the schematics she had scraped from the city's planning database. This isn't good. Thermal sensors, biometric locks, and 3 guards patrolling the perimeter with dogs. We don't need to get into the front door, Daniel said, pointing to the roof. Look at the HVAC units. Massive industrial cooling. That much server power generates incredible heat. They need to vent it. So we climb? Isabel asked, looking at her silk evening gown. She reached down and ripped the skirt at the thigh. Fine. I can disable the cameras for 30 seconds on a loop, Claire said. But that's it. You two have to move fast. Once you're in, you need to find the main server rack. It'll be the one that's air-gapped from the rest. And do what? Daniel asked. Smash it? No, Isabel said, checking her laptop bag. If we smash it, the backup protocols kick in and upload the data to a satellite. We have to poison it. We have to make the math eat itself. They moved. Under the cover of the droning rain, Isabel and Daniel sprinted across the cracked asphalt. Claire killed the cameras. The red lights on the lenses blinked out. They hit the fence. Daniel, surprisingly agile, boosted Isabel up. She scrambled over the wet metal, the razor wire snagging the expensive silk of her stolen dress. She dropped to the other side, landing in a crouch. Daniel followed. They reached the side of the building. The roar of the cooling fans was deafening. There, Daniel pointed to a maintenance ladder. They climbed. The wind whipped off the Hudson, cold and biting. Isabel's hands were numb, but her mind was burning hot. She thought about the years she spent waiting tables, serving men like Harrison Cole, listening to them discuss destroying companies while they ate filet mignon. She thought about her father, who died because he couldn't afford a specialist, because an algorithm denied his insurance claim. She wasn't just fighting for a stock price. She was fighting for the variable that the Harrison Coles of the world always forgot. Humanity. They reached the roof vent. Daniel used a multi-tool to unscrew the grate. They dropped down into the darkness. Inside, the air was freezing. Data centers are kept at near-Arctic temperatures to protect the hardware. They were on a catwalk suspended above a sprawling floor of blinking blue and green lights. It looked like a city at night. Thousands of servers, humming with the collective greed of the world. The central hub, Isabel whispered. There, in the center of the room, isolated inside a glass cube, was a massive black monolith. Thick cables ran into the floor like roots. That's Aurelius, Daniel said. They climbed down the service stairs. They were 10 feet from the glass cube, when the light suddenly shifted from cool blue to a violent, strobing red. A siren blared. "Intruder alert!" a robotic voice echoed. "Sector 4! Claire!" Isabel screamed into her earpiece. "I thought you had the cameras." "I did," Claire's voice crackled back. "They have pressure sensors in the floor. Get out of there. Private security is breaching the north entrance." "We're not leaving," Isabel yelled. She ran to the glass door of the cube. Locked. Biometric scanner. "Daniel, the keypad." Daniel looked at it. "It's encrypted. I need 10 minutes." "We have 10 seconds," Isabel shouted. She looked around. She saw a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. She grabbed it. "Math," she muttered, "is applied physics." She swung the heavy canister with all the strength she had built, carrying heavy trays for 5 years. Crash. The glass spiderwebbed. She swung again. Crash. The glass shattered. Isabel stepped inside the cube. The temperature dropped another 10 degrees. The hum was so loud it vibrated in her teeth. A terminal sat on a pedestal connected to the black monolith. On the screen, a countdown timer was running. Market open. Tokyo. 0203 Drokusas. Sterling Protocol. Integrated. Target. Global energy grid. "They're not shorting stocks," Isabel realized, typing furiously. "They're shutting down the power grid. They're going to cause blackouts in Tokyo, Seoul, and Shanghai to spike the price of natural gas futures." "Isabel!" Daniel screamed. She turned. 3 men in tactical gear were running down the aisle, rifles raised. "Hands in the air! Step away from the terminal!" Isabel didn't stop typing. "Shoot her!" one of the guards yelled. "No!" another shouted. "If you shoot the terminal, the failsafe triggers and we lose the algorithm. Tase her!" Isabel heard the pop of the taser. She felt the barb hit her shoulder, but the thick fabric of the blazer she had stolen from the cloakroom earlier, combined with the adrenaline, dulled the shock. She ripped the wire out. She had 1 minute. She couldn't delete the code. It was too integrated. She had to add a variable. She had to introduce a constraint that the greedy AI couldn't reconcile. She accessed the core logic kernel. If profit 0, then execute trade. That was the base command. Simple, ruthless. Isabel's fingers flew. She recalled the napkin she wrote on in the restaurant. The correction. She typed a new axiom into the heart of the beast. Constraint. Nash. Equilibrium. Humanity. If action causes harm. Profit, then profit ad null. Define harm. Casualty, rate plus poverty. Index. She hit enter. The guards tackled her. Her face slammed into the cold metal floor. A boot pressed onto her neck. "It's over," the guards spat. "Secure the system." Isabel, pinned to the floor, blood trickling from her lip, just smiled. "Check the screen." The guard looked up at the massive monitor above the server rack. The countdown hit 0. The Tokyo markets opened. The Aurelius AI woke up. It saw the opportunity to shut down the Osaka power grid. It calculated the profit, $4 billion. Then it hit Isabel's new line of code. It calculated the harm, freezing temperatures, hospitals losing power, elderly at risk. The equation balanced. The harm outweighed the profit. Profit, null. The AI paused. It looked for the next trade. Shorting a pharmaceutical company by withholding a cancer drug shipment. Harm, profit. Profit, say null. Faster than human thought, the AI scanned millions of potential trades. Every single one of them that relied on exploitation, suffering or destruction hit the wall of Isabel's variable. The screen began to flash. Error. No ethical trades found. System lock. Initiating dump. "What did you do?" the guard screamed, shaking her. "I gave it a conscience," Isabel wheezed. "And it turns out you can't be a billionaire predator if you have a conscience. The system is rejecting its own nature." On the screen, the numbers started counting backward. Liquidating assets to cover ethical deficit. "It's selling," Daniel yelled from where he was pinned on the ground. "It's selling everything." The AI, trapped in a logic loop where the only way to minimize harm was to dismantle the capital used to cause it, began to liquidate Aurelius Holdings. It sold the futures, it sold the stocks, it sold the bonds, and it donated the proceeds to the organizations listed in its database as relief factors, charities, NGOs, hospitals. In 30 seconds, Aurelius Holdings went from being a trillion-dollar shadow empire to a bankrupt shell. The lights in the facility turned bright white. The red alarm stopped. The guards' radios crackled. "Abort!" a voice said on the radio. It sounded panicked. "The accounts. They're empty. The paychecks bounced. We're not getting paid." The guard standing on Isabel's neck paused. He looked at the screen. He looked at his phone, checking his bank balance. "Abort," he muttered. He stepped off Isabel. "You're leaving?" the other guard asked. "I'm not shooting a genius for free," the guard said. He lowered his rifle. "Let's go." The mercenaries walked away, leaving Isabel and Daniel lying on the floor of the glass cube. Isabel rolled onto her back, staring up at the humming black monolith. It was quiet now. Peaceful. "Did we win?" Daniel asked, crawling over to her. Isabel wiped the blood from her lip. "We didn't just win, Daniel. We changed the rules of the game." 3 months later. The sun streamed through the large windows of the corner building in Queens. It used to be a dilapidated storefront. Now it was bright, airy, and filled with whiteboards. The sign above the door read, "The Sterling Institute." Inside, 20 kids from the neighborhood were sitting at desks. They weren't learning how to serve food. They were learning calculus. They were learning coding. Isabel walked among them. She wore a simple blazer and jeans. She stopped at a desk where a young girl was struggling with a quadratic equation. "Don't memorize it," Isabel said gently. "Visualize it. It's not a line on a page. It's the arc of a ball being thrown. It's a story." The bell rang. The kids packed up, laughing and shouting. As the room cleared, the front door opened. Daniel Cross walked in. He looked different, confident, relaxed. Vector Logistics was thriving, operating on a transparent, ethical model that was slowly revolutionizing the industry. "You have a visitor," Daniel said, stepping aside. Claire Hemlock walked in. She held a newspaper. "Have you seen the news?" Claire asked. Isabel took the paper. The headline read, "Former billionaire Harrison Cole sentenced to 15 years. Below that, a smaller article. "Mysterious Robin Hood. Glitch donates billions to global charities." "They still don't know it was you," Claire said. "The world thinks it was a system error." "Good," Isabel said, placing the paper on her desk. "I like being invisible." "You're hardly invisible," Daniel said. "You have a wait list of 300 students, and MIT offered you your tenure back." "I declined," Isabel said. "Why?" Claire asked. "It's everything you wanted." Isabel looked around the room at the erased chalkboards where the next generation of geniuses would learn that math wasn't just about money, it was about truth. "I spent years thinking my value was defined by a title," Isabel said. "Doctor, professor, waitress. But Harrison Cole taught me something important." "What's that?" Daniel asked. Isabel smiled, a genuine warm smile that reached her eyes. "It doesn't matter what you wear," she said. "It matters what you bring to the table." She picked up an eraser and wiped the board clean, ready for the next lesson. "Besides," she added, "the coffee is better here." Isabel's story is a powerful reminder that intelligence and worth are not defined by a uniform or a bank account. In a world obsessed with status, Harrison Cole made the fatal mistake of underestimating someone based on her station in life. He saw a waitress. The universe saw a genius. By staying calm, relying on her knowledge, and refusing to be intimidated by power, Isabel didn't just win an argument. She dismantled a corrupt empire and used her skills to uplift others. It serves as a lesson to us all. Treat everyone with respect, because you never know who is pouring your water. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. What would you do if a billionaire tried to humiliate you? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story about the underdog taking the win. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.